A state that Kamala Harris won in the 2024 presidential election cycle is going to be key for Democrats to pick up, and it's also going to be key if they want to control the United States Senate after the 2026 midterms. That being Senator Susan Collins' seat, who is a long-term Republican senator from the state of Maine and who has faced turmoil in the past for her vote to approve Justice Brett Kavanaugh, etc. So this election cycle is going to be significantly different. This is the first time that Susan Collins has faced off for voters to decide on since her Supreme Court Justice, who she decided to approve, Brett Kavanaugh, ultimately decided to overturn the long-stood precedent of abortion in this country, Roe versus Wade. And this election cycle could be very interesting. But today I want to talk about this specific article, which has to do with abortion, that Planned Parenthood is rolling out more than $600,000 in ad campaigns against Senator Susan Collins and criticizing her for a record on abortion. And this is as Democrats try to control the United States Senate this fall, and ultimately the only path to do that is going to come through Maine. They have to flip the state of Maine. We've talked about the path towards victory, and there truly isn't really any other path other than going through Maine. North Carolina is already expected to flip to Democrats, leaving Republicans with 52 seats, but still a required 3 seats pickup for Democrats to control the chamber this November. So that would include states like Texas, Ohio, and Maine. Otherwise, the Republicans are going to again control the United States Senate after the 2026 midterm. So this is a key opportunity for Democrats to pick up a Senate seat, and specifically a Senate seat where Kamala Harris was elected president. But one thing I want to take a look at is in the latest Fox News poll, which has Susan Collins up by 2%, Troy Jackson up 2% against Susan Collins. Which is a Fox News sponsored poll, has Jackson at 48% of the vote and Collins at 46%. And this is very important for the race as well. Neither candidate is above 50%, but Jackson overall is performing well amongst polling at least. But if we date back to the 2020 election cycle, Susan Collins was behind in polling then and ultimately ended up going on to win that race by 8.6%. So if the situation is similar in 2026, which I don't think it is, but if it is, then Susan Collins is on track to win this race pretty steadily. And that's important for Democrats to keep in mind too, is that perhaps some of this polling could be very off. And another thing I wanted to point out too about some of this polling is the fact that if we look at the crosstabs of this new poll that's conducted on the Senate race, abortion stands as only 5% of what is the most important issue amongst voters who are voting in the 2026 Senate race across the state of Maine. 5% of voters say it is the most important issue. That is behind a lot of other issues. We're talking about political divisions within the country, 13%, healthcare at 15%, immigration and border security at 18%, and inflation and high prices at 32%. This race needs to be center-focused around these top issues, specifically high prices and inflation if Democrats want to win. The idea of coming in and trying to win this race on abortion, I don't think is the winning message for Democrats across the board, and I don't think it's something that Troy Jackson can benefit off of enough to win this Senate race. The real answer is going to be that Democrats can focus on things like inflation and high prices. Keep in mind, 2 years ago, Donald Trump ran on these issues saying Democrats were the problem. You know, there was a Democrat as president. The Democrats held the Senate. Republicans sure held the House. But overall, it was a winning message of inflation and high prices, high gas prices, etc. Today, it's a little bit different of a situation. Republicans control both chambers in Congress, and Donald Trump is president. But we still see high inflation. We still see high prices. The price of gas has went up since the war in Iran. And remind you, people don't approve of the war in Iran. If we look at the conflict in Iran, it's only 6% of voters, but overall, more important than abortion in this race as well. So the question really is do all of these things that are against Donald Trump in the 2026 midterms, do they help Democrats win statewide here in Maine? Of course, I think that the odds are in their favor, and if you go and look at the Senate control expectation on Vote Hub's average, they expect Troy Jackson has a 62% chance of winning, a margin about 2.4%. But I date back to 2020, when Susan Collins ended up winning this race despite the fact that she was not expected to do so. Is something similar going to happen this go around? While I don't think that the odds are exactly the same, and I think things have shifted a lot, there are a lot of questions, and this new Planned Parenthood ad that they're trying to roll out, sure, may help some voters decide that Susan Collins isn't fit to serve any longer, and especially after her vote for Brett Kavanaugh, who went on to overturn Roe versus Wade back in 2022. The question is it going to be enough? No, not alone. The answer, I think, personally, would be that Democrats have to perform really well amongst voters who are worried about inflation and high prices. They have to perform really well amongst voters who are concerned about the war in Iran. They have to perform really well amongst voters who are concerned about healthcare, etc. In order for Democrats to win this race against Susan Collins, they have to be center-focused on a lot of issues. Now, I also want to point out the fact that this race has had its fair share of whirlwinds, to say the least. If we date back to the primary in this race, Graham Plattner was expected to be the Democratic nominee. Ultimately, a lot of scandals and such have come out, and he decided to drop out. That left Troy Jackson as this frontrunner, who ultimately the Democratic Party of Maine has decided to land on and pick as their candidate going forward. So Democrats have had their fair share of concerning moments in the 2026 Maine Senate race. Susan Collins, sitting here as a current senator, sure, disapproved of, according to the Fox polling, and even more disapproved of than someone like Troy Jackson across the state of Maine. But the question is that are voters still going to turn out for Susan Collins? Is she still going to be able to portray this moderate stance, despite the fact that she confirmed Brett Kavanaugh, just recently said that she doesn't regret her decision on that, and ultimately Brett Kavanaugh went on to overturn abortion across the state. Now, this poll, according to Fox, may not say that that Democrats are favored to that Democrats are necessarily in a spot where they're worried about abortion 100%, or even voters across the state of Maine are worried about it by a large margin. But nonetheless, it's going to be important to some voters, and those voters are going to be critical to Susan Collins being defeated this November, sure. But also, to add on to it, it's going to come out to voters who are worried about high prices and are blaming the Republicans, blaming Susan Collins, blaming President Trump. Susan Collins has had a long history of being able to tie herself to a more moderate stance. Can she stand that, given some of her record on certain issues, certain votes that she's taken in the last few years? That's just the question to be asked about these 2026 midterms, and to be asked about Senate control. Because really, like I've said throughout this whole video, the Senate control, the path for Democrats to win Senate control goes through Maine. If they cannot win Maine, they will not win the Senate. Hold me to that. If Democrats end up on election night and Republicans win across the state of Maine in this Senate race, if Susan Collins wins this Senate race, Democrats have completely lost their chance to control the Senate. And you may come to me and you may say, well, they could flip Ohio and Texas and Alaska. We're talking about Ohio, Texas, and Alaska, guys. If they cannot win a state that Kamala Harris won in 2024, there is no way that I believe that they win all three of those races. Sure, Mary Peltola, a great candidate in the state of Alaska. Texas, James Talarico, a great candidate against someone who's flawed in Ken Paxton. Sure, agreed. And in Ohio, long-term Senator Sherrod Brown running against John Husted. That is going to be a race that's going to be interesting. But, again, if they cannot flip a race like Maine, what makes you think they can flip three others? I'm not convinced. Maybe you guys are, but I personally am not. If Democrats don't win this state in the 2026 midterms in the state of Maine, this Senate race, they will not win Senate control. So, with that said, let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Do you guys believe that this race is as close as some are predicting? Do you guys believe Susan Collins may actually be ahead? Do you believe Troy Jackson does have the upper hand? I want to know what you guys are thinking in the comments below. Love reading through those, seeing where you guys stand on these races as well. If you haven't already, make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel. There's a playlist on the right where you can check out all of the 2026 midterm analysis that I have, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Thank you guys again so much for watching.